Hello and welcome. I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines this hour. Thailand and Cambodia agree to an immediate ceasefire, pledging to halt weeks of deadly border clashes from noon local time. A joint statement says the truce covers all weapons and bans attacks on civilians, infrastructure and military targets. A Russian drone and missile barrage on Kiev kills one person, wounds dozens and leaves hundreds of thousands without power and heating in freezing temperatures. The hours-long air alert comes ahead of President Volodymyr Zelensky's planned meeting with Donald Trump to discuss a possible peace plan. Saudi-led forces warn they are ready to act directly against Yemen's separatists, while Riyadh urges them to peacefully hand back seized territory. Saudi officials say the priority is protecting civilians after strikes in Hadramawt and escalating tensions with the UAE-backed forces. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio urges restraint in diplomacy as violence in Yemen escalates. He says Washington supports efforts towards a lasting solution while avoiding taking sides between Saudi Arabia and the UAE. Israel becomes the first country to formally recognize Somaliland as an independent state, with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu promising cooperation in key sectors. Somalia opposes secession, while President Donald Trump says he does not support US recognition. French police arrest a man suspected of stabbing 3 women in the Paris metro during year-end festivities. Prosecutors say that he is tracked through surveillance footage and his mobile phone before being detained north of Paris. The UN Secretary-General says attacks on civilians and places of worship are unacceptable and calls for those responsible to be brought to justice. At least 8 worshippers are killed in an explosion at a mosque in predominantly Alawite homes of Homs, claimed by an Islamist group. Argentina's Congress approves the 2026 budget, the first under President Javier Milei, including around $102 billion in spending and projecting 5% growth with a 10.1% inflation. The plan forecasts a primary surplus of 1.2% of GDP, marking a return to formal budget approval after 2 years of rollovers. We start this hour on Europe's eastern front, and firefighters have been deployed in the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv following massive Russian strikes in the city that have killed at least 1 person. This comes as Kyiv came under a Russian attack, with explosions sounding in the city, air defences in operation and the Ukrainian military saying missiles were being deployed. The Russian action takes place a day before the reported meeting between Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and US President Donald Trump to work out details of an accord for settling the nearly 4-year-old war pitting Russia against Ukraine. Meanwhile, in Kharkiv, Russian forces have attacked the region with 3 glide bombs, killing 2 and injuring 8 people. Russia has also launched a missile strike on the city of Uman in Cherkasy Oblast. 6 people were wounded in the attack, including 2 children. Joining us now is Matti Zaweg, a geopolitical commentator joining us live from Tel Aviv. Matti, thank you very much for joining us and speaking to us on this topic. Of course, a huge barrage hitting the Ukrainian capital this morning. Visuals of destruction of infrastructure, hugely prominent on Europe's eastern stage. Of course, following this, we have tomorrow's meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and US President Donald Trump. Do you think that Donald Trump are going to take these actions into account by Moscow today, of course striking the Ukrainian capital? And how do you think it will affect the talks going forward? The Ukrainian president has come forward and said that these strikes are showing that Vladimir Putin is not serious about peace. Do you think he's right?
Well, I think all sides are right, because this is simply a demonstration of force before the talks. And it's also a demonstration of Putin to say that if I am going to really talk about this ceasefire or peace, if I am really going to this, then I will show everybody I can do what I want. I can continue harassing the Ukrainian soil and the civilians and the military and everybody. So they have to take in account that we are a big empire. You have to take in account all the points that we want to respond a partially yes to any kind of ceasefire. This is from the Russian side. From the Zelensky side, of course, what can he say? He says that they are not serious if they are going to talk about peace and then continue bombing them and killing civilians and military and everybody. And from the Trump point of view, he really wants to put a halt on this for his own interests. That means that he's going to show the world that he can make peace. He can also show that he can continue to have money from all this, because he already did a rare earth deal with Zelensky after they finished the hostilities, giving the American companies the prospect of having all these mines that are so important for the American economy. And from every side you look at it, everyone is looking what they have. They are showing what they have, and they are going to sit under these conditions, that they are brutal conditions, under fire.
Indeed, Matti, and of course, what do you think Russia is trying to aim for here? Trying to weaken Ukraine's bargaining position? And do you think Donald Trump will see that as a worthy chip to bring to the table in tomorrow's talks?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they are trying to weaken them in their already weakened position since Donald Trump took the administration. And they think that they are going to lose less territories if they are going to stop now. And he said that now that if we are going to sign, I'm going to put this on a referendum for the people of Ukraine, so they back us, and we can give up territories. But all the rest, I mean, at least 78 or 80% of all the actual borders of Ukraine, they are going to stay for Ukraine, and they are going to enter the EU, even if they are not going to enter NATO. And he also wants in all the buffer zones in the borders between them to have a clear compromise of the world, including the States and Europe, that they are going to defend these new border areas in a case that the Russians are going to renew the attacks. And they also, he was quite fair, saying that if we are going to breach, violate these points that we are going to sign, our partners, they have the right to stop the cooperation with us and not defend us. So he was quite intelligent in saying these things. The question is if it's going to be enough to convince both Trump and Russia not to even diminish more all the cards that Zelensky have in his hands.
Yeah, indeed. Matti, do stay with us as we have news coming out of West Asia next. And Saudi Arabia has warned separatist forces in neighbouring Yemen to stand down and hand back recently seized territory. In a statement, Defence Minister Khalid bin Salman said fighters from the Southern Transitional Council should peacefully return control of 2 governorates to the Riyadh-backed government. The warning follows Saudi airstrikes a day earlier on STC positions in Yemen's Hadramawt province. Saudi Arabia's regional military coalition has also said it is ready to act directly against any challenge from separatist forces. Coalition spokesman Turki al-Malki said the action would be taken at the appropriate moment to protect civilian lives, raising tensions in the conflict-hit country. Matti joins us once again. Matti, why has Saudi Arabia chosen this moment to confront the Southern Transitional Council here?
Because the situation is that they have two fronts in the last 10 years in that place. One is in the north with the Houthis, and one is in the south with the government that is internationally recognized as the legal government from Aden, yes? But in Aden and surroundings and in other places, you have the STC. And this STC is quite strong. You must understand who are they. I mean, they were established in 2017. They were trying to restore the South Yemen as it was until 1990. And it's composed by the politicians, military commanders, tribal leaders. And the question is they are trying to get their power again because the only resource of richness in the area is the oil. They are oil rich in all that area. That's why they seized the Hadramawt and Al-Mara areas. And you have a guy that is called Aidarus al-Zubaydi, which runs the STC. He is very intelligent. He knows how to move inside this internal politics, but for all the countries that are supporting the international government, recognized government, is United Saudi Arabia and all the rest, but the UAE, they were supporting this separatist STC for their reasons. So now it's very important for them, taking in account that they have hundreds of kilometers of border with Yemen and also Oman, and they are very afraid that this destabilization is going to strengthen the North and the Houthis, and maybe they are going to take this as a weakness point that they can even attack and take more territory. So they are afraid of that. They have to try to do some united front with this STC and the other government. Is going to be hard, but it's in the interest of everybody that is not pro-Houthi.
Yes, Matti, thank you very much for joining us. It's always a pleasure to have you here on the programme and speak to you on these matters. We now move over to Southeast Asia for our next story, and displaced civilians in the Xinjiang region are voicing strong opposition to the upcoming election in Myanmar, calling it an unfair vote. Living in makeshift jungle shelters, they say they cannot support the election while their lives remain in danger amidst ongoing conflict. The military junta is set to oversee the polls starting on Sunday, presenting them as a return to democracy. However, critics and international observers argue that the month-long vote is merely a rebranding of military rule 5 years after the coup that sparked civil war. The election is seen as heavily restricted, with limited participation and a growing humanitarian crisis. Let's in fact listen to some of the displaced civilians.
ကျမဒါခုနှစ်နေရာမြောက်ပါပဲဒီနေရာကိုတော့ကျမတို့မသိပါဘူးဘယ်နယ်လို့လဲကျမတို့ဒါအမှန်တိုင်းပြောတာပါမသိပါဘူးကျမတို့နေတာဝေယုံမေအောက်မှာဖြာခင်းနေရတာပါဘဝတွေလည်းကြမ်းလို့ကိုယ့်ဘဝတွေကိုလည်းနားတယ်ဒီမေလို့ပြောရင်လည်းစိတ်နာတယ်ကျမတို့မိသားစုတွေကွဲတဲ့အတွက်လည်းတကယ်ရင်နဲ့ခံစားရတယ်အမေကိုလည်းလုံးတယ်အမောင်လေးတွေလည်းလုံးတယ်ဘယ်နေမှမသိကျမမှာဖုန်းလည်းမရှိပါဘူးသူများပေးမှာဆက်သွယ်ရတဲ့ဖုန်းကိုလည်းကျမအဲကြောင့်မလို့ရွာကိုလည်းအမြန်ပြန်ကျင်နေ သူတွေတကွယ်တများတွေတကယ်ဖြစ်နာပါကျမမေဆိုဖြူးမျိုးဘက်ကိုပါသွားတာဘယ်နေကောင်းလားသေးပြီလားလည်းမသိရပါဘူးကျမတကယ်ခံစားပါတယ်ဒါအမူအရာမာယာလေးနဲ့ပြောနေလည်းမဟုတ်ပါဘူးကြည့်နေတဲ့ပြည်သူပြည်သားတွေလည်းကျမတို့လိုဒုက္ခရောက်နေတာတွေကိုဒီမအေးလိုဘက်ကနေပြီးတော့မဲတွေမပေးကြပါနဲ့ရောက်လေရမှာဒုက္ခတွေဖြစ်နေပါတယ်ဆိုတဲ့
မြေကိုဘာလို့လဲဆိုတော့ဒီချိန်ဒီ9နှစ်အတွင်းဆိုရတိုင်းတာတခုမှလူပေါင်းဟိုမိသားစုပေါင်းအသက်အိုးစီစဉ်တိမ့်နဲ့ချီပြက်စီးပြီးတော့အလဲလဲကိုမိသားစုတွေမှာ10ယောက်ရှိရဲ့လူက1ယောက်ပဲကျန်တဲ့ဟာမျိုးတို့9ယောက်ရှိတဲ့တော့1ယောက်ပဲကျန်1ယောက်မှမကျန်ခဲ့တဲ့ဟာမျိုးကြီးတော့လူပေါင်းများစွာအသက်ပေးပြီးမှလောက်တဲ့ယူကောက်ပွဲတော့တရားမျှတတဲ့ယူကောက်ပွဲတွေတော့ကိုတော့မထင်ဘူးကွာဟို2020တုန်းကယူကောက်ပွဲတော့အေးစစ်စစ်နဲ့ပြီးသွားပြီးတော့လူတိုင်းကထောက်ခံတဲ့ယူကောက်ပွဲဆိုတော့အဲ့ဟာယူကောက်ပွဲနဲ့ရှိရင်ဒါက10ပုံတပုံတောင်မှ တရားမျှတမှုရှိမယ်လို့ကိုတော့မထင်
ရွေးကောက်ပွဲမှာတော့မွေကတော့ယုံကြည်ချက်မရှိဘူးကွယ်မွေကတော့ဒီဘက်မှာပဲစိတ်ကအာတိတတဏ္ဍာပေါ့အတူတို့လက်ကလွတ်အောင်ဆိုပြီးတော့ဒီဘက်ကိုပြေးလာခဲ့လိုက်တာပဲမွေကတော့လုံးဝကိုသူတို့ကိုမကြိုက်ဘူးဒါကြောင့်မို့လို့ဒုက္ခခံပြီးတော့ဒီမှာကလေးတွေတပြုံနောင်ကြီးနဲ့ဒီဘက်ကိုလိုက်လာတာ
Joining us now is Gautam Mukherjee, a senior journalist, joining us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much for joining us, Gautam. Of course, this election is coming up tomorrow with humanitarian agencies and international actors believing that as this is pitched as a free and fair democratic vote, it's not going to be that. These displaced civilians that we've just heard from have been calling the election unfair, so it's even going on within Myanmar. What does this tell us about the credibility of this election that's been put on nearly 4 years after the military took over in 2021?
Well, I don't think it's much of an election in the normal sense, but it is more of a referendum to keep the junta in power, and those who've been displaced are quite rightly not very happy about it because it actually is designed to preserve the status quo. As far as military rule in Myanmar goes, while it is not very democratic and is prone to attacking its own people every now and then, you haven't had very much better under other forms of government for the last many years. Myanmar has been unstable for decades. So what is the alternative?
Yeah, indeed. And of course, there's conflict going on. Millions of people are displaced in the country and many areas are unsafe. What more can you tell us about the election and about the background here? Obviously, there's a civil war going on. Of course, a rife humanitarian crisis caused by an earthquake in the past year. What more can you tell us about the junta, its governing power and how it operates there, and what we know so far about this election process?
Well, one is that they are not particularly well off financially. They are dependent for handouts mainly from China, and China also has a lot of influence in Myanmar. That there are various ethnic groups that have been at loggerheads has been the story of Myanmar for quite a while. And that is beyond, I would imagine, the possibilities of the military junta to cure. Others have tried who are not backed by the military, and they haven't succeeded either. So this unstable situation is likely to continue. You can criticize this election, but who is going to substitute them? As I said before, the fact that they've had earthquakes and other natural disasters to cap it all is also a problem. And India, of course, has offered them humanitarian aid, but at the same time, India has problems with certain ethnic groups that are sheltered along the border of Myanmar, who come in and create confusion in states like Manipur and Mizoram and Nagaland. And so we're slowly fencing the border, and sometimes we have to go across and destroy the camps of these people who are also unfortunately backed by the Chinese.
And Gautam, of course, some people are saying that this is branded as being a return for democracy because the junta wants recognition on the international stage. Do you think this election is enough for the Hun Minlang's government to get it?
Probably not. I mean, it's already being framed as a sham election. However, they are trying on their part, the junta is trying on its part to get wider recognition so that it obtains loans and support from the multilateral agencies. It is fairly broke, and it has, it must try, at least for itself, to broaden its appeal. So it's trying to do that. Whether this will succeed with anybody beyond the Chinese, I cannot imagine.
Yes, Gautam Mukherjee, do stay with us as we have further updates, but this time coming out of South Asia, and a concert in Bangladesh was abruptly cancelled after a mob attacked the venue, leaving dozens injured. The incident occurred yesterday night at the Faridipur Zila School located south of Dhaka, where a reunion and cultural program was underway. Organisers say a group of outsiders attempted to force their way into the venue and began hurtling bricks and stones after being denied entry. At least 25 people were injured, including 15 to 20 students. Popular Bangladeshi rock singer James was scheduled to perform and was already at the venue when the violence broke out. He was forced to flee as authorities ordered the immediate cancellation of the concert to prevent further escalation. According to local media reports, the event was meant only for registered former and current students of the school. However, large crowds reportedly gathered after news spread that James would be performing. Authorities are expected to investigate the incident as concerns grow over crowd control and event security in the area. Gautam Mukherjee joins us once again. What does this mean for Bangladesh? What more can you tell us about this incident?
This is fairly typical of what is going on now. The good thing is not many people have been killed. In fact, there are no reports of people being killed, but disruption is par for the course. You've got the Islamic extremists on the one hand who are trying to hijack the country with the backing of the ISI and Pakistan. On the other hand, the BNP, Khalida Zia's party, is making something of a comeback because her son has come back to Bangladesh after 17 years in exile, and it has been the legitimate opposition to Sheikh Hasina's Awami League for a long time. And Khalida Zia, of course, has been in power for more than one term in the past. Her husband was also in power, just as Mujibur Rahman was in power. So, I mean, these are the two parties that actually have been ruling in Bangladesh. But the Islamists want them both gone. And one, they have managed to ban. The Awami League is not allowed to participate in the elections coming up very shortly next year. The BNP, on the other hand, has legitimacy and legacy and might make short work of the Islamists in the event the leadership is able to gain traction in the period leading up to the elections. So this instability will go on, partially because the Islamists are taking over or attempting to take over, partially because of economic dire straits, and lastly because the political situation is such that the current dispensation is unwilling to use a strong arm, and the army, etc., which could put all this to rest, is not allowed to operate.
Yes. Gwata Mukherjee, thank you very much for bringing in your perspective there. It's always a pleasure to talk to you and have you here on the programme. We now move on, and 4 people, including 2 children, have been injured in an explosion at a madrasa on the outskirts of Bangladesh's capital of Dhaka. The blast took place at the Umal Qura International Madrasa in the Hasnabad area of South Kiran-Ganj. Police say explosives and bomb-making materials were recovered from the building following the explosion, and local residents say the madrasa has around 50 students, but no classes were being held at the time, as it was the weekly holiday. Witnesses also report that the blast caused the walls of 2 rooms to collapse and left cracks in the roof, support columns, and even a neighbouring building. The property had been rented for 3 years by a man named Mufti Harun, who later handed management to his brother-in-law. The owner of the building says she was unaware of any illegal activity, and police say the cause of the explosion is still under investigation. Well, that's all that we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more international updates.